Well, good afternoon, colleagues. The government has made clear our commitments to stand up and ensure children remain in class. As you know, we made an offer to CUPE yesterday. We attempted to resolve our differences by working with a well-respected mediator. But CUPE yesterday failed to make any substantial concessions on their demands. And now, CUPE has made clear their intention to strike starting Friday, even after the government brought an increased offer of up to 10% over 4 years while protecting the best pension, benefits, and 131 days of paid sick leave. If we do not act today with legislation, schools will close on Friday. And if we do not introduce this law today and pass it ahead of Thursday, CUPE will again be able to walk out of class with hours' notice. To us, the choice is clear. We are acting decisively in the defense of students so that these kids can finally maintain stability and learn and grow after last difficult years. The government has been left with no choice but to take immediate action today. And that's why we introduced the Keeping Students in Class Act that would establish a 4-year collective agreement with CUPE education workers across the province that ensures children remain in class where they belong. And I want to emphasize that we're not taking a blanket approach to all education sector unions. We will continue to bargain with Ontario's other education unions to reach a fair agreement in good faith while remaining squarely focused on what matters most to parents and to this government, which is stability for children after an extraordinary difficulty of the pandemic. As for CUPE, it is quite unfortunate that it has come down to this situation. But Ontario's nearly 2 million students have been through too much over the past 2 years. And we owe it to them to stand up for their education, to stand up for working parents, and to stand up for those kids who face very legitimate and sincere mental health difficulty, those kids that rely on our schools for nutritional programs, the counseling, the speech pathology, and frankly, for many, their basic safety. This is about doing what's right, and we'll continue to act decisively so that your kids can remain in class where they belong. Happy to take some questions.
Minister, 10 years ago, the Dalton McGuinty government imposed a contract on teachers. The courts ruled it was unconstitutional because it violated their rights. Is what you're doing unconstitutional?
We believe what we brought forth not only is constitutional, but ensures stability for children. We've made it crystal clear on our government's commitment. It's why yesterday we extended an offer to the union, an increased offer to the union, to avert this very discussion today.
How is this not a violation of workers' rights, though? You are taking away their right to collective bargaining.
We gave CUPE an option yesterday to come to the table with a reasonable offer. We presented an increased offer of 10% over 4 years with maintaining those benefits and pension programs, which are the best in Canada. We gave them...
They gave an ultimatum yesterday.
Pardon me. I'm just going to finish the question. I'll happily come to you. We gave them an option yesterday. Work with us, take away the 5-day strike notice so there's no strike on Friday. Because if we don't act today, if we don't introduce legislation as we speak, there will be a strike on Friday. And so we gave them that option. We enhanced our offer, and they still refused. And so here we are today in a position where we must act to provide stability for children, and that is the right thing to do.
Okay, but why not just leave it with back-to-work legislation and let an arbitrator sort out the contract? Isn't that sort of a less nuclear option?
Look, we have been clear from the beginning. Our mission is to provide stability and keep these kids in school. You just heard from the former Liberal Minister of Education about her challenges with this. We want to make sure that there is no disruption. We want to make sure that there's no issues, litigation or otherwise, that could essentially get these kids back out of class because of strikes locally or provincially. This proposal, this legislation, provides absolute stability for kids to the extent we can control it and ensures they remain in a classroom. That nothing at all, now or in the future, could prevent the child's right to be in a classroom learning. And so that's why we've taken the actions we have today with a level of regret, because quite frankly, we would have preferred to get a voluntary deal when we increased the offer to the union, who has said, as recently as this morning, that 10% over 4 years, that maintaining 131 days of sick leave, maintaining the best pension and the best benefits is not enough. What would have averted a strike, according to CUPE themselves, is accepting their reasonable proposal of nearly 50% increase in pay, representing $19 billion sector-wide, because whatever we sign with CUPE becomes the floor of negotiations for the next 8 negotiations, including with our teachers. And so we brought forth a prudent plan. We increased our offer. We provided something I thought was quite fair, and more importantly, that maintains all the benefits and entitlements these workers have that, as you know, many people in the working economy do not. And they have proceeded on a path to a strike. And if we don't act today, if we did not introduce legislation now, this afternoon, there would have been a strike on Friday. And I believe there are parents in this province who demand that government is on their side, that we say enough is enough. There's got to be some stability. Think of what these kids have gone through. Speak to the pediatric hospitals and the mental health wards, the speech delay. We have kids that don't even have access to basic nutrition without access to our publicly funded schools. Is it not the obligation of government to stand up for them, to give them a voice, to ensure some continuity in their lives? I mean, the EQAO data is just one data point that every parent in this room already knew. Learning loss is real. Being out of class creates long-term impacts to their lives and the economy's productivity. And so we will act. We will introduce this legislation. And it is regretful that the union did not pursue. When we gave them an off-ramp, we increased the offer. We pleaded not to strike. That they're proceeding with this is quite frankly unacceptable. It's unfair. But obviously parents could be assured that we will act to ensure their kids stay in school.
Do you think the union is just exaggerating when it says that its members are on using food banks? Do you not believe them when they say that?
What I know is that our education workers play really critical roles in our schools. We honestly, I mean, they are important to the function of schools. They make a difference in the life of a child. So, and to answer the question, what I know is that education workers in Ontario are paid the highest in Canada. What I know is that the average hourly wage is $27. I know that they're entitled to indexed pensions, which most Canadians do not have. I'm also aware that they have 11 paid sick days at 100% and 121 of short-term disability at 90%. I'm not aware of many folks in Canada that have those benefits. Now, frankly, we value them, which is why we're maintaining those benefits. It's why we're increasing the pay. It's why we offer them an option yesterday to avert this, where we transparently said, you know, we would much prefer a deal. But when the union announced the commitments on a 5-day notice to strike on Friday, no responsible government would sit back and hope for the best. They should, and we are taking action to ensure these kids remain in school.
The real problem here,
striking Friday anyway. CUPE says they're striking Friday anyway, so how does this provide any kind of stability? And did it not actually maybe push them to doing a strike that might have been averted if you could reach a deal at the table? It's,
you know, I've been saying through the summer, with regret then, as I do today, that this was the intention of the union all along. I don't believe, you know, there was any way for the government to get to the demands they have of nearly 50% in compensation, 33% increase in salary alone over 3 years. And so we offered in good faith the first offer, then we offered them a better offer. We then asked for an additional day yesterday to avert a strike, which the union has decided to put us on a 5-day footing, that this Friday, 2 million children roughly would be out of school. So we offered something better on the basis that it is affordable, it is fair, it represents the deep respect we have for the work they do. I mean, so much so that there are 7,000, nearly 7,000 more staff, education workers specifically, we're talking about CUPE type staff, in our schools since we formed government. In the program we brought forth to the union when we tabled it to try to get a voluntary deal, which they rejected, and then announced a 5-day strike, notwithstanding the increase we provided. We actually have 800 more workers, 800 more teachers, and 1,800 more educational workers through the maintenance of the Support for Students Fund for the next 3 years, on top of this year. So we are increasing wages. We're maintaining strong benefits and pensions, but we're also insisting that kids remain in school.
Because you're telling parents there's not going to be a strike on Friday based on government actions, but we're hearing there is. Is there anything the government can do
Yeah.
short of finding some common ground at the table with CUPE?
It is obviously very regretful, very concerning to hear that. It is certainly our intention that the kids will be in school. We will pass a law. And obviously, I think there's not a parent in this province who would be supportive of children staying home for even 1 day of a strike. The Premier made this clear. The government made this clear. medical and pediatric experts, academics, teachers in the front of class have made it clear. These kids need to be in a school, in a routine, learning, getting back to basics, enough of the disruption to their lives. And this is not just an academic challenge. It causes long-term impacts to their lives, their mental and physical health too, their social development. There are so many young kindergarten teachers who talk to me all the time, and probably to you, that their kids don't have basic reading skills. Stability is the important outcome we can achieve for parents, but more importantly for their kids. We gave the union an option. We pleaded with them to accept it, a better option, by the way, where we moved. The only force at the table who's been intransigent, who's been absolutely insistent without any concession or move at all, certainly when we had this discussion Sunday, was CUPE, who said, no, we are going to strike unless you accept our nearly 50% increase in compensation, of which includes a 33% increase in pay for workers who are objectively paid highest in Canada, who make more in our schools than they do in a hospital, a college, a university, or the private sector. And we believe in them and we support them, so much so that we're going to increase their pay every single year over the course of this contract. But they've made the decision to strike, and we've made the decision to introduce legislation to provide stability. And I do hope common sense will prevail, the interests of kids will prevail, and those workers will be in school on Friday, do the right thing for 2 million kids that depend on all of us to be the adults in the room and put our kids first.
We're talking about some of the lowest paid workers. Two things. Are you concerned optically that 70% of those are women? And are you concerned about the heavy hammer that you are attempting to drop?
My concern is for the 2 million children, for the moms and dads who care for their kids, who would have to be upended in their lives again. Keeping in mind, we just went through strikes in this province 2.5 years ago, then followed seamlessly by a once-a-century historic pandemic, right? Like, I think about the kids. I care about the workers, which is why we're maintaining their benefits, their pensions, and we're increasing their pay every year, 10 points over 4 years for the majority of our working staff. But I care most, at the greatest level of concern for children. And frankly, every parent knows that they've seen the regression in their kids. They've seen the impacts of this pandemic. Every child has seen some change, and some have been very dramatic. Some have led to, sad outcomes. And I think that needs to be front and center in this discussion. I think kids need to be front and center.
What about concern for the 70% of the women who may be struggling to make ends meet? Perhaps they're single moms.
Right.
What about those optics?
Well, I think it's important that they know that we are going to increase their pay by 2.5% every year, right, up to that level, 10% over the course of this program. We're going to maintain their benefit program, which supports their family. We're going to maintain their pension that gives them some predictability on when they could retire and some dignity in their retirement. It's going to ensure that they have paid sick days, 11 at 100% and 120 at 90%. That is a pretty competitive program. And you compare Ontario to other jurisdictions, BC, Quebec, some of the bigger provinces are small. We still are ahead. I mean, and for our teachers, for example, we're the highest paid in Canada. And in Ontario. And so we do this, I say this not as a side fact, I say it because it speaks to the heart of your question. We do value them, which is why we're increasing their pay and their supports. But we do insist, and I think every parent insists, that we ensure their kids remain in school. We could have that debate, but kids shouldn't pay the price no longer. Honestly, it's deeply, when you speak to parents and you see the struggle they face and the angst they have for their kids and where they're at, it is incumbent on a responsible government to say, enough, these kids need to be in school. And that's what we're doing today. We're providing the stability I believe the overwhelming majority of the population wants us to do. Even if it is difficult, it is right. And kids deserve to be in class.
Minister, are you concerned about broad labor reaction to this, to broad labor chaos? Doesn't get any more fundamental to unions and collective bargaining.
Right. I think this bill is very specific to CUPE by design and makes it clear the intent is to narrow cast it on just those workers that decided, for that union that decided yesterday to announce a strike. Right? We wouldn't be here, Antonella. I would not be standing here, frankly, introducing a new law today if the union didn't decide to put themselves in a 5-day strike, confirming that Friday kids would be out of school for roughly 2 million kids. They made that choice. But before they made that choice, we reached out to them and said, look, let's meet one more time. Let's try to find a voluntary agreement, a resolution that is, livable for all sides, a decent option. And we did. We offered them more. We said, please don't do this. We actually told them yesterday, we will move forward with legislation should you proceed, because we will not tolerate a day of a strike. And it's sad that we're here, because I think most parents would have preferred a deal that all sides could have consented to. But I think the metric of success when it comes to the parents, or the benchmark by which they're going to evaluate this bill, is will their kids be in school? And that's the intent of the bill. It's what it achieves. In the meantime, we'll continue negotiating with other sector partners and our teachers, really to get a voluntary deal that is fair for their workers and respects the good work they do, but most especially keeps these kids in school now and right to June.
If CUPE members do go on strike, like the union is saying they still will on Friday,
Right.
and this legislation has passed, the back of the napkin math is that this would be hundreds of millions of dollars in fines to their members in the
Right.
union each day. Where's the government going to draw the line? Are you going to make an example out of certain workers, or is it prepared to go about fining every single CUPE worker who is in fact striking?
Well, the legislation sets out those particulars really to deter any violation of the law. My hope is, frankly, that over the coming days, some cooler heads will prevail here, that we won't be encouraging workers to walk out of schools and impact kids and break the law, that we will be present for children every day, doing our very best with the commitment to keeping these kids in a stable, safe environment. And I think it would be very, very unfair to children, even after the government passes the law, which is the intent ahead of Friday, to see millions of kids pay the price again for another day of escalation by the unions. There just isn't tolerance for that. And I don't think it's fair to the kids. I don't think it's fair to the families who now have to take off work, the schools that will close, childcare, which affects literally millions of people in our communities and our economy. Honestly, that's not fair, and our kids deserve better. And I really hope that over the coming days we could come to our senses, and there will not be a strike that impacts children on Friday, that they will stay in school every day, as is the spirit of this bill. The reason I'm standing here in the first place is because the union rejected the offer to rescind, to withdraw their strike. They're on a path to a strike on Friday if we didn't act today. And I think it is the right thing to do just on the basis of the interests of children, giving them a voice, standing up for their interests and welfare. I mean, this has gone on for a long time, these strikes in Ontario. But the last couple of years, honestly, it makes it such a special moment in the history of this generation. Never have young people faced so much difficulty in such a prolonged period of time. And so, yes, I'm appealing on a moral basis to the workers who I know love these kids, that they will do the right thing, show up, make a difference, and continue to enrich the lives of a child. But we obviously have no tolerance for disruption or a strike of any type.
Are you going to try to reach a deal while you pass this legislation? Are you open going back to the bargaining table?
We gave the union an option to do that yesterday. We invited them. We increased their offer. They rejected it and said, no, we're striking on Friday. The government is going to pass the bill. We're going to move forward and provide stability.
Negotiations.
We gave the union yesterday an option to come forward. When they announced, on the day they announced their intention to strike, right? They announced on Sunday that they're going to go on a strike on Friday, right? We said, okay, let's meet that afternoon, give them a better offer, urge them not to strike. And they said, thanks, but no thanks. We want nearly 50%. We want a $19 billion cost when applied sector-wide. What you're offering is insufficient. And so they're proceeding on a strike. And so we are proceeding with legislation to avert the strike and to provide stability parents deserve.
They say they're working on a counter-proposal. Are you saying you're not going to hear it out?
We have made clear to the union. They had an opportunity to present to the government a counter-proposal that they may or may not introduce. This is very abstract. You know more than the government or the school boards, for the record. But what I'll tell you is this. We gave them that chance. They could have said to us, give us a day. They said, no, we're going on a strike on Friday because we insist upon an increase of pay of nearly 50% and compensation, to be more clear. And I think that's really unfair. I think, frankly, it's disappointing because I actually believed yesterday that maybe was the off-ramp they needed. Let's find a middle ground here. We'll increase our offer a bit. They withdraw the strike, the recommendation, or rather the commitment to strike on Friday. But they didn't do that. In fact, they doubled down and said, we will strike unless you accept our, what they will call, affordable $19 billion offer. And I don't think many people know or expect that.
I mean, you said that if you give them this increase that they're looking for, then you have to give it to everybody. Why? Why is that?
Yeah, so there's essentially within labor negotiations, the Me Too clause will be essentially whatever we sign with CUPE today, the first bill, the first contract, becomes the minimum standard as a Me Too. Those other labor partner negotiations will automatically get that because they're built into the contract. So that if someone goes first and someone later gets a better deal, the first union gets lifted up. The point is that becomes the minimum, the starting line of discussion. A $19 billion ask, a nearly 50% increase in compensation, 33% in pay alone. And I know, I mean, look, I know I'm not speaking specifically to your sector of work, but I don't think most people at home are eligible for those increases. They're working harder and taking home less. And I do believe these folks deserve more, which is why we're offering 10 points over 4 years, giving them entitlements and benefits and pensions and sick leave that most people could only dream of. And so we offered them something better. They rejected it and confirmed a strike. And today, to avert the strike that the union themselves are on a path to, this Friday, like in a couple days, we are taking action, as I think any responsible government would do, to bring some stability to these kids and bring some certainty to their parents, who I think are very anxious about this circumstance.
Me Too clauses then the problem? Like, could you not go do something legislatively to end that practice instead of using the notwithstanding clause to steamroll this particular union right now? Could you not, isn't a room for reform? If that's really the issue here, is that if you offer what might seem reasonable to some people, but if it becomes unreasonable if you have to apply it to absolutely the entire sector, isn't that like the actual issue here?
I think the issue is that we have an education union on a path to a strike, irrespective of what the government offers, unless it's nearly 50%. And I think that's unfair to kids, and that's why the government is acting today to keep them in class.
Very quickly,
Yes, please.
just to follow up on my colleague's question.
Sure.
There. So, doors closed as far as negotiations go, and does CUPE know that? Because it sounds like they are preparing to come back tomorrow, if I understood them correctly.
We made it clear to CUPE, abundantly transparent yesterday, that withdraw the strike notice, work with the government, accept what we thought was a reasonable increased offer of nearly 10%. And they said no. They said, we are going to strike on Friday. And thus, we're going to move forward, pass this legislation, and keep kids in class, providing the stability that children in this province deserve. Thank you so much. Thank you.